The war in Ukraine has many fleeing for their lives as they seek safety and shelter. What is the church doing to help them? And is there anything you can do to help?
We'll talk with ADRA representatives Alex and Elsa Balint about this and more today on Real Family Talk. Join us. Today on Real Family Talk, we'll discuss the effects of the war in Ukraine on refugees, what the church is doing to help them, and sharing what you can do to help.
That's right. The escalating conflict in Ukraine has quickly become a very serious humanitarian crisis. It is reported that close to 2 million people have already fled Ukraine in search of safety. That astounding number continues to grow by the day, I would say even by the hour, perhaps even by the minute.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has mobilized its global resources in support of their local teams on the ground in Ukraine, its neighboring countries, and across Europe to serve those who have been displaced by the conflict.
Alex Balint is the Initial Emergency Response Coordinator for ADRA in Ukraine. He joins us today to talk more about what ADRA is doing in Ukraine and around the world. His daughter Elsa also joins us to talk about her own personal humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. Alex and Elsa, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're very excited to talk to you, and I'm especially excited because I want the viewers to know that, Elsa, you're only 15 years old, and we can't wait to get into this conversation with you. So you work for ADRA, and ADRA is the NGO, if you will, of the church, the Adventist Disaster and Relief Agency. So as we start, can you tell us, for those viewers who don't know, what ADRA is and what exactly do you do in general?
As you rightly said, we're the agency of the church, the arm of the church, if you want. We call ourselves the hands of Jesus in the world. Going anywhere to make a difference for those that are suffering. And what you just mentioned, the crisis in Ukraine, all the refugees. But there are other emergencies around the world. As you know, there is the people in Yemen. There's 20 million people in Yemen needing humanitarian assistance. There's the people of Syria. There's disasters around the world, a drought in Africa. So we're responding to all those emergencies, as you rightly said, and impacting more than 20 million people every year.
As the initial disaster response coordinator for ADRA, what is your principal role?
I remember landing there, must have been 4 days after the conflict has started. And I remember getting there. I was myself and actually one of our colleagues from Hope Channel, Brother Vyacheslav. He joined me on that trip. We were supposed to have a conversation about how to mobilize aid in Ukraine. Actually, he joined me on that trip. Once I arrived there, my role was to bring the resources in for the country, find resources within the country, and get everybody started. And then other colleagues from all over the world, from here, from the United States, from South America, from Europe, even from Africa, they are joining us to put together what we call an emergency response team. And I was the coordinator of that. So the first initial steps we've done, we liaised with the church leaders, the union president, the ADRA director, the team, and they were actually taking refuge. This was just days after the war, right? They left Kyiv, some of them were in the eastern part of Ukraine, and they were all over the place. Some of them in Lviv, some of them in Mukachevo, some of them in Chernowoods. And I remember starting with prayer and saying, we need wisdom. How are we going to mobilize as ADRA and the church working together, engaging with each other, the institutions that we have, including the Hope Channel, to provide humanitarian assistance. So that was my role, to bring the resources and put a team together.
Right. So that sounds like a pretty complex operation. You're having people coming from all over the world and you're putting resources together. What are the initial resources that you put together when you face such a great humanitarian crisis as what happened there in Ukraine and what's still happening?
I'll give you a few examples. The first one, but by the time I got there to Romania, to the Romanian border, because I crossed later inside Ukraine. So when I arrived at the border, ADRA Romania has already sent a convoy with humanitarian assistance inside Ukraine. Right. ADRA was the first agency from the Romanian side to send aid in. But as you know, this crisis is all the way from Poland, from Slovakia, from Hungary, from all these border crossings. We've been sending aid. So that was the initial, mobilization, if you want. And it's for me, it's been an exhilarating experience to see the level of solidarity and mobilization. The church and ADRA, we mobilized 1,000 volunteers from the Romanian side. Yes. 7 border crossings, receiving all those refugees you've seen in the news. So we provided assistance. And the second step was now to activate the aid inside Ukraine. So as I was traveling on those humanitarian flights, leaders here took decisions to allocate funds that we made available to our colleagues in Ukraine. And those funds were readily made available, some of them within 24 hours through the mechanism we have in place. And so we were providing, all those people in Bucha that you've seen in the news, we had people trapped there for days.
Yes.
Women, children.
We have a school there. We have a school,
exactly. They were there in the basement. And the community from around that area, actually, they were with us, with our ADRA colleagues and the church, and they were trapped there. So I remember stories from our colleagues how people just spend all their savings to buy food and water for these people. So we provided the financial assistance so they could go and buy food and water and mattresses for those people. And then we provided funds for them to buy buses or rent buses. It was hard even to rent them, so we had to kind of buy buses so we could evacuate people. And then those buses, in turn, they would go from church to church, if you want, or from center to center, school to school, to provide assistance and bring assistance back to the country.
Wow. So that's a mouthful. Yeah. And even as you were speaking, I'm thinking about it because I was in Romania when this started.
You were?
I was 300 miles from the Ukrainian border. And the day it started, the pastor who was translating for me, he pastored at the border. In fact, the border ran through his village where his church was.
Wow.
And that very day, pastors who were in my training event went to the border to get people. And
wow.
I was in Romania that first weekend there, and there were members who had come to the conference I was speaking for, and they were going to the border to bring people. And on Sunday, when I was on my way to Bucharest to get my flight home on Monday, I saw Army trucks and buses going to the border to bring people. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how all of this is working together to help people. And what a wonderful thing that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a humanitarian organization like ADRA.
Sure.
And an emergency response coordinator like you.
And thank you for that. And I will just add that, so while during the 3-4 weeks that I was there, we've evacuated almost 3,000 people, including lots of children.
God.
And we provided shelter for more than 10,000 people and then food for another 10,000 people. And that was just one project alone. Wow. And as I report to you now, it's almost 2 months on since this has started. Yes. We are now reaching or targeting 1 million people, and we have 23 projects inside Ukraine alone, not to mention all the other countries. So that's the role of mobilizing the assistance. That's what ADRA does, and then brings the resources, and we just scale and scale because the needs are, last I checked the other day, 17 million people are in need of assistance. Half of them inside and outside Ukraine in need of critical assistance.
Wow. This is just absolutely amazing. When we return, we'll continue to talk more with ADRA Emergency Response Coordinator Alex Balint, and we'll hear more from his daughter Elsa about their humanitarian efforts in Ukraine and around the world. Stay with us.
Today on Real Family Talk, we're talking about Ukraine and the church's efforts to help those seeking safety and shelter in the midst of the conflict. We're talking with father-daughter duo Alex and Elsa Balint about the humanitarian work of ADRA and the work they themselves have done in Ukraine. So, we're still talking with you.
We're still talking with them. So, Elsa, I'm just so inspired by you already. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you are a sophomore in high school. And yet you did something pretty amazing during your spring break this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was really a surprise because we started hearing about these news about these mothers and their children, how they had to suddenly flee their home with no place to go. and carrying their whole life in 2-3 bags. And I started together with some kids, from our local church, Natalia Kudo, Roman Jordash, Lauren Fennell, and Sam Miranda. We joined together and we started a fundraiser at our church, and we raised like a couple thousands, maybe even like 3,000-4,000. Yeah, and it was spectacular because. We were speaking with our church members, and we were getting everyone involved. We were posting it all over our social media, and then spring break came around, and we were saying, what better opportunity to go now? So I used my savings with my sisters, and of course our parents chipped in.
For the plane tickets.
Wait,
tickets.
So you actually thought about going into this area where there is this conflict?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I wanted to from the start, but then, you were thinking, how would it be possible? There's so many complications, but then because my dad was already there, it was perfectly set up. So we're like, it's a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and you said your sister went with you, and how old is your sister?
Yeah, she turned 13 there, but she was 12 when we left.
Okay.
So yeah, we traveled alone for the first time.
That's even more amazing. And what's your sister's name?
Julia.
Julia. All right. So tell us exactly what you did when you were there, when you got there. And how did you feel? Like, what did you see? How did you feel about the whole situation?
Yeah, when we arrived there, because my dad was mostly, coordinating the whole aid, and he was busy with meetings, and the first thing we did was go to the border, at the border crossing in Siret. And my sister and I, we spent most of our time at the ADRA tent set up. And we, along with the other ADRA volunteers, would fill these boxes with hygienic products, snacks, food, water, socks, and gloves and hats for the children were a big need.
Because it was still cold.
It was freezing,
cold,
yes. And we had heard from, my dad before going there, we had to go to, buy these big, thick winter jackets because it was freezing. I mean, the first day we were there, we were all staying next to the heater. It was a bit better the next few days. But yeah, we were going around the camp, distributing these boxes filled with hygienic products and to the families. We were also talking those who could speak English, or with translators. We were speaking with the mothers. I spoke with one mother in particular, and she was kind of not really interviews, but just to kind of observe, to know what's going on, getting needs assessments, seeing what they needed exactly. We went to the local church as well. There we actually, the original plan, the original fundraiser was skip a meal to give a meal. So we were focusing on food. But then when we got there, we realized, these children, as they were staying, waiting for their mothers to get help, I saw how, gloomy, how much terrible things and it's an unbearable thing to see in a child's face.
Trauma.
It's really heartbreaking because they had to leave all their childhood behind. So we started focusing on the kids, and we realized they had no toys with them. So really our fundraiser, we started using our funds towards the children, and we started buying toys and personal lingerie for the children because they'd been traveling for days and they didn't have any change. And we started giving it to the mothers on the buses, waiting by. So it was a really wonderful experience. It was totally different than in the news, because now it wasn't like a general idea. Each of these, this whole conflict had a face now. It had like individual mothers with their children. So it was really heartbreaking, but then also so empowering to know that we could do something to help them.
That's so beautiful. It's just such a powerful rendition of like what really was happening on the ground. And I love what you said about, like, we watch it on the news, but you experience faces. Like, these are real people. These are children. You and your sister, your teens, your young teens. This could be your life as well.
That was really what we were thinking.
Yeah, but you did something special. You have a picture that you shared with us, and there was a little girl that seemed to be a little attached to you.
Yes, Arena, actually, when we went to the local Adventist church in Sutrava, which is nearby Siret, we met this family with these 3 little girls, and one of them was Arena. And I was introduced to her with, through translators. And apparently she hadn't been speaking for 4 days ever since they left Ukraine, because she was so, traumatized.
Yeah.
And her mother, she was so desperate because she couldn't get her girls to talk. They weren't speaking. She was so worried. And then, my sister and I actually, when we went shopping, she came up with the idea. I wanted to buy like regular Barbie dolls, but she came up with the idea to buy Disney princess dolls, because it was our favorite, as kids.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? I think some girls would like these. So when she saw them, like I had like the Elsa doll or the Rapunzel doll. When she saw them, she started smiling, like she started beaming up, and her mom started tearing up, and she told us, and like, you don't know what this is. And if she's smiling, to know that she had been through so much, and an innocent child who has seen so much suffering, to smile after all that. Everyone started tearing up in the room, and it stayed with all of us, all those who were present.
It's a
it stayed with
breakthrough.
Yes, it was
Amazing.
really amazing. It was so inspiring, and it stayed with me. Even now, I think about her.
Yeah.
Even with me, if I may add, that was my favorite story. And I had a colleague of mine from Australia, Michael, that was there. Even he said, wow, we didn't expect it, because we were so focused on delivering convoys of aid.
Yes.
And filling the trucks with aid and providing evacuation assistance. And I would say, for the record, these were their own funds for the toys they raised.
That's what's so amazing.
The funds they raised with the church, they went to ADRA to provide food and shelter, but they had their own savings they put into buying toys because that was a need. And we said, wow, mental health is important, and ADRA is focusing on mental health, but the way children look at it and handle it, that was great.
Yeah, it's just such a reminder that mental health assistance comes in different ways, in different forms.
Yeah.
And so here you, as a child, you're a teen, but she can see that you're not a parent. And to be able to reach her in that way was just absolutely powerful. So we'll talk more with Alex and Elsa when we return after a short break. Stay with us. We're back on Real Family Talk, discussing the refugee crisis in Ukraine and its neighboring countries and how the church is helping. Plus, we'll talk about how you, our viewers, can help.
That's right. The work that ADRA does touches millions of lives in more than 118 countries around the world. ADRA has an on-the-ground approach that really allows to provide immediate assistance in times of crisis and true partnership with the communities they serve. So, Alex, what are some things that you're doing, because there are crises in other parts of the world, and I'm wondering what specific issues, crisis, projects that are taking place right now you can tell us a little bit about?
Allow me to say, you're right. We touch, like I said, over 20 million lives every year. We've done tremendous support during the COVID-19 pandemic that is still going on. There are projects that I was discussing today with partners of sending more containers with medical supplies. That includes Ukraine, but includes many parts of the world, including the African continent. And we've actually reached more people that we usually reach every year during the pandemic. We went over 20 million. But one project that, if you want me to just point, staying on children, how important it is for children to be in school, all this crisis, you see lives torn apart. All the women and children, they had to flee. One heartbreaking experience for me when I went with the convoy, one convoy inside Ukraine, and then I came out and we were stuck in customs. I saw a very long line, only children. Most of them orphans, and some of them was mothers and children. And probably some of the viewers and the church have heard about the Every Child in School Everywhere.
Yes.
ADRA's campaign to keep children in school, especially all this education through emergencies. Kids still have to learn, whether it's online, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in other conflicts in Africa and around the world. 5 years ago now, if I'm right, we started, it was caused by a drought in Africa, but we started an initiative in 5 countries. It wasn't one country, 5 countries, and we almost started from scratch with generous support from our donors, partners, and sponsors to keep children in school and provide 1 meal a day, at least 1 lunch for them. So even parents, we thought that enrollment would go up in maybe 10% in the first 3 years. We were surprised in the first year it went up almost 8%. and we were targeting the enrollment to go up, 10%. But today, I'm happy to report to you and our viewers that 50,000 children, and this is an ongoing, relief operations. They are receiving a meal and they are in school in all these 5 countries.
Remarkable.
With a lot of support for the country of Madagascar, where we're sending more aid and we're sending containers as we speak, to feed those children. So we're trying to have that on-the-ground approach, as you say, and just help communities become more resilient to all this crisis and conflicts and climate changes that the world is facing. We'll face more and more challenges.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and as the world is using still fossil fuels and what have you, it's getting more and more difficult. And the church, through ADRA, becomes the arms and the eyes and the heart of Jesus. Because this is what we're talking about. And resilience has
Exactly.
become the watchword during these crisis situations with all the trauma that families are going through.
Sure.
And in Ukraine, in a special way, I see, the older men get to go, but the younger men and others, they have to stay because they have to be a part of the conflict. Yes, and we're hearing about other conflicts and other crisis situations, like recently in Haiti, and all that happened there, and the what was it? Earthquake, another earthquake
sure.
that happened. What are you doing in Haiti right now?
So we are providing assistance. We responded immediately after the earthquake, and remember they had a 2010 earthquake, and ever since we're providing assistance. And they had hurricanes over the years. I remember when Hurricane Matthew hit Haiti. We sent 10 containers of aid to Haiti right off. So there is probably no emergency that you see in the news that ADRA is not responding.
That's
We're always
wonderful.
there. We're always on the ground with our volunteers. And it happens within 24 hours, within 48 hours, within 72 hours. We have plans in place, national disaster response plans. We work with the church and the community and the civil defense organizations and other NGOs in the country to mobilize immediately assistance.
Yeah, I am so proud to be a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the fact that we are so involved on the ground. And I think it's very important for people to hear you say this in these projects, because sometimes people say,
What is the church
what
doing?
is the church doing, as I said earlier. But how can members get involved, and how can they be assured that if they donate to ADRA, that it's actually going to get to the people? Because a lot of times people will also make that comment. How do I know if I send money to ADRA that it's going to reach the people?
Well, all our resources are, of course, the stewardship is very important to ADRA, but we have in-kind resources, and then we have, of course, the generous cash donations from all our supporters, the members who support our mission. We administer every dollar with so much care, and we put it where it has the most impact. And and we are the catalyst, if you want, as you say. We are the boots on the ground to
Yes.
mobilize the aid. But then members can always engage with us, can become volunteers. Teens can, just start something because they want to get involved in the community, or even in a crisis far away, and support that cause.
So I have a question. Elsa was able to go because her father is involved, and the lay of the land. She and her sister got on a plane and flew there. She knew where to fly. What do you say to people who don't have a good grasp of what's happening? How can they best help? Because not everyone will have the access that Elsa had to get on a plane and fly there and know where to go.
And sure, and that's a very fair question. That was a unique opportunity because I was there. I couldn't return back in 3 weeks as I promised my family to be back. I had to stay longer. And we were born, I was born an hour and a half from the border with Ukraine. So as you say, they almost came home and mobilized to assist from there. But they used their savings to pay for that plane ticket, and we chipped in and helped.
Yeah.
So if you want to help, and a lot of people did this, they pay for their own plane tickets and they bought supplies and went. It's better to support the charity that you trust, and ADRA is one of those for the church that do great work, because we could use all those resources to have a great impact, to provide anything that's including assistance, mental health, whatnot. So that's a better way to support, I would say. Monetize everything instead of we're receiving a lot of donations that are in-kind, and people, I understand, they want to just have something tangible to give.
right.
But needs were changing while we were there
Right.
almost every day.
Alex and Elsa, thank you so much for being with us today. We are just so inspired by your stories and your sharing. God bless you in your efforts to help people around the world.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Real Family Talk today. Join us again when we'll share more about strengthening families and inspiring hope. See you next time.